Yeah. Here we go.
All right, hiya. I'm here with my friend Dani today, and I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do and where you come from and why you're here.
So I'm a nurse, but I have stepped out of like the traditional field of that. But I've been a nurse for going on 11 years now. And through that, I kind of discovered Reiki. So I also work as a Reiki Master Teacher. And I like to define that as like teaching and teaching myself and mastering my own life force, as that's what like Reiki boils down to, is life force energy, and then working with others to help them learn about themselves, their life force, and how to master that. And when I say master that, that's just using it.
Yeah.
We use a lot of the body, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. So looking at like your fight and flight, your rest and digest. And that can also translate to like your masculine and your feminine energy, and how to just understand your body more and what you need so that you can step out of fight and flight, and use it productively. Like we have to have that triggered, because otherwise we don't get like out of the bed in the morning. Or if you need to make yourself something to eat, like to survive, but not chronically running in that mode.
Beautiful. So you do the different energy work, the Reiki. What inspired you personally to get into this?
Yeah, I burned out as a nurse. So I had a lot of unresolved trauma. I have a lot of addiction on my family tree. I'm actually a recovering alcoholic. That was probably symptomatic of burnout and just not realizing it. By the time, it was probably about 2015, so not too many years in the field. At that point, I had a lot of weight gain. I was on antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds. I had chronic urinary tract infections and chronic issues with my stomach. And it was kind of like I went to one doctor after the next. I did one procedure after the next, couldn't figure it out. And even in that world, we don't talk about like, well, it might be burnout, or this might be like symptoms of other things. Like, where are you taking care of yourself? So about 36 medications later, I just like walked out of the field. Like, I can't do this anymore. And it sounds really funny, but I kind of took like a year of spiraling to myself. I sold leggings in between that. I didn't even know what Reiki was at the time, hadn't heard of it. And I just kept feeling called to like Reiki. So I kind of like went and explored that path and used that for myself. And then was like, okay, like I want to learn more. And the funny thing is too, like Reiki's set up kind of like where you're becoming attuned, and you kind of think like, okay, you're going to work with people. But as you go through those processes, you're really learning more about yourself. And that may involve working with others, but it kind of becomes more of this life path. And I'll share too, coming from the medical field, but always being open-minded. At first, I thought like I was losing my mind a little bit when I was like venturing into those realms. But I had two really good instructors. We took one semester, that was it, of holistic medicine. And I remember her using a pendulum, and like we did like chakra balances and stuff. And then I had an instructor too. We did a whole semester of herbal pharmacology. And so like they were really important roles in me knowing like it was safe to like look at this and start using it for myself. And it just kind of has unfolded.
So I can see where being in the medical field and then going into energy work could be quite a shift. And I have had similar experiences with people that if they're in the medical field, they often don't relate to the idea of energy work, or they kind of like shrug me off if I say I'm an energy worker. But then I've also had a lot of doctor friends and other nurse friends that they really do tap into the energy, and they understand that it works differently. From my personal experience, when my grandmother was in the hospital, my aunt got really into energy work and like oils and even more the nutritional side of it. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for those that maybe they are feeling crazy, maybe they don't know how to get grounded in this practice without going too far into the woo side.
Yeah.
So what's the advice you have there?
Yeah, find a mentor, find a trusted mentor, and that's going to look different for everybody. But just because there are so many places, and the web's a great thing, but then now we have like a lot of access to a lot of different information. You know, DOs, so osteopathic practitioners, and physicians. There's a lot of that's a good balance. So they're not medical doctors, they are, but they are trained with a holistic approach. So finding one of those to reference if you're wanting to kind of start at the physician level, and just finding a good mentor. And I would say using your guidance and do your research. A lot of it when you take time, because I've noticed a lot of people kind of like shunning at first too. When you take time to really sit with it and start looking at it, not just start jumping into this oil or this herb or this treatment, you can start seeing the similarities. We're saying the exact same things, but we have two different languages for it. So I think it's okay to explore. And any medical professional you go to ask, request, normally, like, we are still trained in herbs and all these things, so we can talk to you about different
different offerings.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people don't realize too is a lot of different medicines are herbal mixtures. Not all of them. Now there's a lot of like more chemical based things, but different remedies that you might find in a medical industry versus like an energy working community. There is that overlap. They're just kind of packaged differently, but not always. And when they start giving you too many at once, it can really affect the body. Just like if you were eating all the herbs at once, you're going to feel a little weird.
Yeah.
So something else, I want to go back to the burnout, because I think this is something that so many people struggle with. I stumbled upon one of your videos. You have a YouTube, right? What is the YouTube?
Yep. Heal What Ails You.
Heal What Ails You. I stumbled upon one of your videos where you talked about soul burnout and the issue that comes up where no matter how much you feel like you rest, you're still burnt out. And we are really catering to a lot of creatives and inspired individuals through this broadcast and through Bring Me to Life. And so often I find creatives, they will just keep going and going and going because they feel like they can never do enough to reach this like legacy or this level that they want to reach. And then they have this like sadness to them because they are constantly working, or they're not showing up as authentically, which is something else I've heard you speak on. How can we work through that? Or what is some advice you have for the creative burnout or the soul burnout?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. So boundaries are going to be like my number one thing. And just because that one word encompasses so many different attributes. Burnout in itself, and so you speak on like the soul exhaustion, and that's when we would like literally like that's burnout. Like if you're not having joy, you keep showing up, but it's almost like a depressed state.
Because I've been there. I've been like, my soul's tired.
Yeah. At that point, you have been in survival mode for so long that you don't have the capacity to receive joy. And so that's when we talk about like that parasympathetic nervous system, that's the one that we don't like to talk about a lot in the world, or just hasn't gained a lot of traction. That's your rest and digest, but that's also your receiving component. So if you're at those states, and that can be very seasonal and momentarily, we all go through that. But if you're at that state, something has to change. And I like to look at it too, like as a society and the creative, you're talking about that production. It's when you start looking at it, it's an addiction to the stress hormones in our body. So boundaries can look like boundaries to yourself. No, I'm not going to create today. Or maybe you're creating in a way that's just not in alignment with you because somebody else is needing you to create that way. Maybe it's time to say like, hey, I need to not do this for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, ever. There's different levels. But I would also, with that preference, like slowing down. So sometimes too, when we feel that way, we want to make like a huge shift and a huge change. Right. We want everything really fast.
Mine's like the desire to have a legacy. Like I want to leave something. If I leave tomorrow, and then there's just this whole list of things that like I'm inspired to do, but I burn myself out so quickly sometimes that like I don't have the 10 minutes to write in my book. And giving myself Reiki sometimes feels counterintuitive because I'm like, well, if my energy's off, then I'm not really serving myself either.
And the root of that, and I can say this from personal experience too. When I was in the medical field, my goal was to be a nurse practitioner, and I was going to change the medical system.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was my legacy, what I wanted to do. But we also have to be willing to look at, and that's where a lot of self work comes in, because it's not easy, and people might tense up as I talk about this, but we're human. We all go through it. Why the legacy? What are we trying to prove? So why do we feel that, one, we're not worthy of just like experiencing bliss and joy in the state that we're in? Why does it have to be that we've like accomplished this huge thing? And so, for me and a lot of those that I work with, we kind of have to come back to that little root. That ends up putting us in that drive where nothing's ever good enough. Mm-hmm. So we just keep going and doing at the detriment of ourselves, and it can actually start detrimenting those like around us.
I feel like there is that balance to like it's one thing to be motivated and inspired, but that deeper drive to just feeling like you constantly have to be moving, you constantly have to be doing, that seems to just be so common right now because just the economy and the industry of art and musicians and those that are teaching too, because we cater to the change makers, the advocates, and it's just there is this just what can I do? How can I do more? And it's exhausting, and it does feel like no matter how much we sleep, sometimes that it doesn't get better. So the boundaries, I think, is a beautiful recommendation. So through your YouTube channel, Heal What Ails You, did I say it right? Okay. You also offer some other forms of insight. You have a unique living style that you share upon and how you've built that. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
So I am off grid officially, I guess, have been for going on 2 years, maybe 3. We're officially in like our in-between home. So we've been in a tent for 2 of those years by choice. That was how we were able to best use our life force, was to just make that decision. That has been part of my healing of burnout, slowing down. And when I look at like life force and what that means, like even making money, we think like money is so valuable because it's backed by gold, and maybe so, but I have a way of looking at it of like, really it's so valuable because it's backed by your time, like your life that you're willing to sell for it.
Yeah.
And money is a great thing. It can be a resource, but it was important to me to be able to slow down and be present. And I really like when I'm a person, I need to like sit with the trees. Like I need to like sit and be still and observe and all that. And so being off grid allows me to like be able to slow down. It allows me to not require so much money so that I can be like discerning in how I'm going to show up and who I'm going to show up with and all that jazz. So that's probably been part of my own healing.
I'm just kind of like smirking because I'm thinking if I lived in a tent for that many years, I would be burnt out just from living in the tent. But it brings me so much joy to see how happy it makes you and your partner, and the idea of building your forever living space from the bottom up and seeing you take care of the land has been such a journey. And you share a lot of that journey on your, is it the same or a different YouTube?
No, it's actually different. So you can find everything. I have a website, healwhatailsyou.org, and the other one's linked on there. But the off-grid site is Green Hawk Sanctuary.
Okay.
That's what we've just like kind of called it. My last name's Green and his is Hawkins, and it's his family land. So, but Sanctuary was our goal. Like we just wanted a place to feel like safe and bring in like Shangri-La. So for us and for others.
Yeah, that's so cool. Can you say the website for everybody one more time?
Yeah, healwhatailsyou.org.
Okay. So before we hop off here, is there anything else that you feel inspired to channel or share today about your practice, your lifestyle, or just anything you think that whoever's watching might need to hear from you?
Yeah, I'd just like to maybe give a reminder that, like, especially in this world right now, it's okay if you feel burnt out or, you're maybe not experiencing as much joy. As hard as it is, use that as an opportunity to like listen to yourself. Like something's not right, and you have the ability to make a choice for you. It might not look like my journey. You might not be living in a tent, but and it's okay to do that. And that is a boundary in itself to say like, hey, I'm going to choose me because we're all worthy of that.
I think that is just so beautiful because boundaries are, like I said earlier, just they're so hard to set sometimes because especially if you're that person that just wants to do everything and say yes and to be there for everybody, if you don't set the boundary for yourself, you're just depleting the energy force and eventually you won't be able to keep going, and it's a whole situation. So all right, I invite everybody to go check out Dani and their website and also the Greenhawk Sanctuary page.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in any of those things, and I really do recommend the Burnout video. It was right on time. And yeah, thanks for joining me for Shine On Mine.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.